Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar series. My name is Katie Lentini. I'm the Director of Channels here at FutureCom. I just want to thank everyone for joining today's presentation. We know you're getting approached by several companies to join in on their sessions, so we appreciate you choosing ours today. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone's lines have been placed on mute, but you are welcome to submit a question through the chat or Q&A window at any time, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Justin Powell, one of FutureCom's senior engineers, to speak briefly about our services capabilities. Justin, go ahead.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Another day of work from home, generally for most of us, so thanks for taking the time. I wanted to take a minute and tell you a little bit about FutureCom. If you're new to us, FutureCom was established in 1991, so we've actually been in this space for nearly 30 years, right? So that's amazing in and of itself. We're headquartered here in Grapevine, Texas, in the DFW area, and we focus on what we call the 3 C's, which is cybersecurity, consulting, and cloud services. To give you an idea of what that means, I want to show you a quick map. We call it our solutions map. If you've ever spoken to me, you'll hear me call it our cheat sheet all the time because it's a good way just to describe the different areas, different technology spaces, so to speak, where FutureCom provides products, services, or even managed services. Obviously, it's designed to look like a network map, so hopefully that is pretty self-explanatory to most of you who are technical. And as I said, we focus on those, what we call the 3 C's. A lot of it comes down to networking, advanced networking, cybersecurity services. But at the end of the day, what we're really about is solutions. And I want to take a second and define what that means. We're not trying to sell you a product because in our experience, what we found is that oftentimes a product, a box, so to speak, isn't necessarily the right solution for most of our customers. Most of our customers need some sort of product, but they need it implemented properly, tuned properly, and set within their overall IT network infrastructure, working with other tools to get the business result that they're hoping for. So when we talk about solutions, we're really talking about products as well as consulting services, as well as managed services. So let me jump into why that is. So we live in a world that is rapidly changing. There's just incredible increasing complexity that we see in the digital world. For example, and I've given this presentation a number of times, and the first one I talk about remote users or mobile users. Obviously, everyone here, everyone in the United States practically has experienced a major change in how we work. And, with our entire office here at FutureCom, all working from home, right? Not only has that changed our company, but it's changed the IT infrastructure of companies and other organizations all around the United States. It's driven a complexity to even a greater scale than had existed in IT systems before that. Now you take those remote workers and add to it things like the proliferation of data and devices, as well as cloud services or having critical company data on other locations or on infrastructure the company doesn't control, and add to it this bring your own whatever, right? Which is the idea that users want to be able to access their data wherever they are at any point in time on any device that they're on. So clearly our world is getting more complex from an IT infrastructure standpoint, not simpler. Now, as we go on to the next step, in addition to this increasing complexity, we're experiencing as a country an epic cybersecurity labor shortage. 62% of US organizations say they're currently understaffed from a cybersecurity perspective. On average, it takes 3 to 6 months to fill a cybersecurity position, and some percentage, 10% is the stat here, but I heard more recently it's higher than that. Some percentage of these positions never even get filled because we can't find the right person that's qualified, that has the right skill set, the right background. And sadly, it's predicted that we're going to face an even bigger shortage in the future. Within the next couple of years, there's predicted to be a 2 million person shortfall in qualified professionals. Okay, so like I said, increasing complexity. Now we have this epic shortage, but here's the fundamental challenge. You take this increasing complexity as well as a time imperative. We've got to be more efficient. We've got to do more now, and add to it this idea of resource constraints. And that puts us in an interesting situation, right? And the situation is that fundamentally, we have to resolve more risk faster and with fewer resources. And I always laugh when I'm in person with people here, because I always say, put up your hand if you want to sign up for that job, right? No, nobody does. That doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound easy. And so we as a company, FutureCom has said, how can we help our customers deal with this sort of crunch of issues that are happening? And we realized we have a lot of ability, engineering expertise and experience to allow us to help fill that gap for organizations. And I'm not going to read this slide to you, but we provide a number of services, whether it's implementation or compliance related services, identity and access management, all of those services to help bridge that gap for you. And then just to call out a few of our specific consulting services, we provide design and architecture services, regulatory compliance, as I mentioned. Maybe it's a best practice consulting engagement where you're just asking, hey, is this configured the right way? Maybe the guy or gal that installed this is no longer there. You know, let's take a look at it. And maybe it's a firewall rule assessment there, or a wireless site survey. There are a number of services that we can offer to bridge that gap from a labor perspective. And then last but not least, as you'll learn here on this webinar, we have a number of managed services that we can offer for you. So you'll hear about our human security service this morning. But in addition to the human security program, we have managed email security, managed endpoint security, overall management of security solutions, maybe it's firewalls or something like that, as well as co-managed security services, where if you still want to have a piece of the pie, so to speak, we can work with you to make sure that we're covering whatever gaps need to be covered to make sure that you're secure and that your network is operating efficiently. So with that, I thank you for your time. Thanks for your attendance today.
And I want to introduce to you Brandon, and Brandon is from ExtraHop. He is going to take over and tell us a little bit about how we're going to protect the spread out, widened landscape that we were just talking about in this entire presentation. So Brandon, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Hey guys, my name is Brandon Roberts. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, so somewhat local to, it's probably where your guys are located. And I'm honored to be here today to talk to you guys about securing the hybrid attack surface with cloud native network detection and response. What I'll do though, I will jump into just a real quick ExtraHop overview as to who we are as a company. ExtraHop was created in 2007. Two chief architects from F5 who created the big IP decided, hey, we can do some things better. They came over and created ExtraHop. So as it stands today, we are a high growth cybersecurity company with nearly 500 employees and a global presence. We are an innovator in machine learning and analytics, as well as a leader in cloud native NDR. On the right-hand side, we've got a couple of blue chip customers. You might know those logos. And underneath that, we have quite a few industry accolades for almost everything under the sun, whether it was performance related, whether it was security related. And I can provide resources and examples after this meeting. So jumping out of that, we're going to go back to our main discussion. So ExtraHop, being a cybersecurity company, we are disrupting the legacy approach to network security. We are utilizing the power of network data and cloud scale machine learning to make it possible to protect the entire hybrid attack surface, from the cloud to the remote users to the IoT devices, and helping enterprise security teams protect the modern enterprise. You've got your remote users, you have your IoT, everything's siloed, you've got your tool sprawl, all of this creates noise. Visually speaking, probably looks kind of a lot like this. Systems and applications are distributed across data centers, they're distributed across remote sites, they're now on the cloud, and you now have an expanding web of IoT devices such as security cameras, phones, printers, not to mention the BYOD devices. So you're probably now facing a surge in remote users, placing new demands on security and performance optimizations. What they all have in common with this convoluted picture is everybody's drowning in alerts and they all lack situational awareness. There are real consequences to this noise and to this complexity. Traditional methods of detection include logging, they include agents, and they only cover a fraction of the attack surface. Most organizations that have logging turned on were maybe up to about 50%. But with IoT, with the BYOD devices, it's becoming less and less. You're not now just lacking overall visibility, but it is estimated that misconfigured cloud services on a global level are costing about $5 trillion year over year. All of these challenges are compounded by the lack of collaboration and the information amongst sharing teams. Enter NDR, otherwise known as Network Detection and Response. With these challenges, it's absolutely no wonder why the organizations like yours are investing in detection and response. According to Gartner, this year, 60% of security budgets will go into this exact category. Detection and response technologies rely on 3 foundational data sets: your SIM tools, which use logs, your endpoint detection and response, otherwise known as EDR, which uses agents to gather data at the endpoint. And the gap is everything in between. What's going on inside the enterprise, otherwise known as the East and West corridor. That's a real game changer, and that's the introduction of network detection and response. NDR is using network data to close the key visibility and analytics gaps in the enterprise SOC. So you can now see not only east to west, you can also see north to south. Unlike SIMs or EDRs, NDR provides detection and responses across all 3 main pillars. We are complementary. All 3, perfect solution. If you don't have all 3, one of the more comprehensive solutions would be the NDR side. Armed with this turnkey visibility, security organizations now have the complete visibility in real time to respond to threats and make intelligent decisions. NDR is the missing link, and it is the only detection and response offering that provides you the perspective to quote unquote rise above the noise. Covering the East and West corridor in addition to the North-South corridor, you're going to have your EDR, which has those endpoints. You're going to have next-gen firewalls that are creating the barrier around your data center. Your SecOps teams are still going to need to detect the threats that are already inside the perimeter, whether it's malicious actors or whether it's just insider threats. And they have to do that for every device, not just the devices that were logging in or turned on last Sunday, right? That's not to say about the growing attack surface. I'm talking about all on-prem. But if we include cloud, if we include the remote deployments, if we include IoT, starts to get much more convoluted. You might ask yourself, but can't my insert product name here already do that? Insert SIM, insert IDPS, insert EDR. Maybe. Most of the time the answer is no. But as mentioned earlier, both EDR and SIM are key components of that detection and response triad. Both are very limiting when it comes to providing instrumentation and detection across the East and West corridor. On the right-hand side, EDR, you can't place it everywhere. It is machine specific, it is OS specific, and for IoT devices or bring your own devices, you may not even have an opportunity to install the agent. On your SIM, it can be expensive. You will probably have incomplete data due to the expense, but at the end of the day, even in a perfect SIM environment, you're going to lack context. IDPS, compliancy does not always equate to security. You will have false positives, you will have false negatives, you will also still have the limited visibility. Lastly, forensics, everything that's a packet first approach. That's great for finding the needle in the haystack, but you will encounter scalability issues and there's limited detections. Packets take up a lot of disk space in order to store packets for that one incident that occurred that one time on that Sunday from somebody accessing something they shouldn't have. You probably may not have that packet. An example, City of New Orleans was shut down. What happened was they automatically detected and evaded logging and host-based EDR countermeasures. The attack was detected, but EDR and SIM were inadequate and the data had been tampered. They altered their tracks so they couldn't be found. Inventory of the EDR after the fact was inadequate and the reinfections kept occurring. The security team was forced to fall back on packets, but once again, they had a limited supply of packets and they weren't capturing packets everywhere else. With the unique power of NDR, this is something that ExtraHop RevealX could have brought to the table. I would have noted the suspicious connections. I would have seen the lateral movement and the further infection spread. Those are all things I would have highlighted, whether it's over an SNMP trap, whether it's an email, whether you log onto the box and I give you a big red exclamation point that says, hey, look here, something's abnormal, you'd see that information. But also you'd see everything that was going exfil. So everything that was inside that was going outbound to a suspicious IP or was just a large set of data, you would see in real time. whether it was suspicious SSL, whether it was orphan HTTP posts, and whether it was malware reporting on EDR. ExtraHop plays nice with all other technologies. At the end of the day, we are wire data. The cybersecurity triad is both SIM, it's both EDR and NDR. All three together, that's a powerhouse of defense and attack. So the question is, what sets ExtraHop apart? If there's only one takeaway you have from my myriad of slides that I have here, it's probably this one slide. So ExtraHop Reveal X starts with the power of wire data. The streaming analytics engine transforms unstructured packets into structured wire data at line rate up to 100 gigs per second in a 2U box, meaning I can keep up with the modern enterprise networks and data center speeds. This data, classified and indexed, is analyzed along many dimensions, yielding high fidelity insights about threats, about unusually potentially malicious behavior, and we further enrich that data with insights with asset intelligence, threat intelligence, and risk context. So what you're looking at here is the depth of data. So you see the time series, the metadata, I can keep that for months or years. Everything is indexed. So if you were looking for that literal file name, if you were looking for that literal error or that IP or that MAC address or the L7 protocol, that information's at your fingertips. If you saw something that looked suspicious or you wanted to dive further, you would then go into the transactional metadata. Think of transactional metadata as everything about that packet that I've extracted out and turned into a metadata and then also indexed. So now you can see the individual connections from IPs to other IPs, servers involved, status codes, what the protocol was. But lastly, if you absolutely need to download the raw packet, we offer that as well. The idea of ExtraHop is not to be packet first. The idea is that you can log on to a central GUI and all of the information that you need is at your fingertips without ever having to download a single packet. But I get it. Sometimes you might need to download that packet. Maybe there's something in there pertinent to whatever the investigation is. We do allow that as well. The ExtraHop full spectrum detection. So we provide full spectrum of detections, not just the detections of known and unknown attacks, but also detections of operational or cyber hygiene issues, the difference between proactive, between reactive. Reveal X uses a range of detection techniques to detect all of these activities and behaviors. The combination of everything above provides a more holistic coverage of TTPs, top 10, and MITRE ATT&CK. You've got your rules-based detections, which is just advanced rules logic to identify attacks by specific attributes. Most CVEs that you have that rely on network data are probably identified in that manner. You've got your robust anomaly detections. Reveal X builds more than 100 predictive models for every device observed on the network, continuously learning baselines and then detecting against anomalous changes in those behaviors. You then have sophisticated behavioral detections. We apply a number of machine learning techniques and models, including unusual login times, for instance, or interactive remote shell commands, or new strings of ransomware. Because these types of detections rely on behavior, not signatures, they're more effective in detecting previously unknown attacks. And lastly, you've got your peer group anomaly detection. Reveal X learns which devices constitute an application workload or peer group, including enterprise IoT devices, such as your smart TVs, your printers, your VoIP phones. But we kind of bucketize that. We say, hey, these are the peer groups. This is how this device, this is how that smart TV acts. This is the ports it communicates on. And if ever it deviates from the normal, I will certainly let you made aware of that. The ExtraHop architecture, very, very simplistic. Everything on the left, you've got your cloud, you've got your on-prem, you've got your remote users, your IoT devices. On your cloud, you've got different flavors. Could be Google, could be Azure, could be AWS. On-prem could just be a myriad of packets, but keep in mind, it is wire data. I do consume packet data. So if we're talking AWS, you can flip a switch, turn on VPC mirroring. You can send that data locally. You can send that to the cloud, or you can send that to our SaaS instance. If you're on-prem, you might have a myriad of sources that are going to feed us packets. And what you see there is because of our partnership with Ixia, Ixia would be a port aggregator. In most, if not all of my installations, whenever I go on site to a customer, they usually have tens to hundreds of ports that they all need to aggregate, and an Ixia broker management console box would be something that you'd feed all of the connections into, and then I would consume. I being the ExtraHop platform. So for every device that I see on the network, I will deduce 5,400 plus metrics, depending on the time range, depending on who was logged on that box. I have the data at your fingertips to answer the questions that you need answered. I am also protocol fluent. I can deduce 76 protocols plus protocols, and that's always adding. When I first joined this company, we were about 50. Now we're about 76. But what does that mean? That means if this were a database call, if this were a SQL call, I know that because I'm reading it from the header and I'm understanding the body. I will start to extract contents out of the header and out of the body so that you can see the destination, the IP to, from, in addition to the SQL query. I can also understand the error messages and anything passed along the likes of. So that's the ability for me to say, hey, John tried to access from his box to that database server. He's using a weird port because I know what the standard ports are. And also this is an unusual behavior based off of John's login time. And oh, by the way, John's also logged into 3 other boxes. Those are just things that ExtraHop would bring to life at your fingertips. I also do decrypt SSL and TLS 1.3. Keep in mind, all of this is 100 gigs per second line rate. So I'm highly scalable, all on a 2U box. And then whether it's physical, whether you want that 100 gig box, whether it's virtual, or whether it's in the cloud, we've got you covered. This is a quick slide just so that you can understand what we do from an IoT perspective. On the left-hand side is our GUI. I've clicked on assets. You can see that I've got about 3,400 assets. I am looking at about 540 new devices, but I am looking at devices by role. Because of that protocol fluency, I can, right out of the box, you don't have to do anything. Just plug us in, turn us on. I'll start showing you gateways, IP information, or IP camera information, I should say, medical devices, your load balancer, and your firewalls, so that you can quickly click within those and get more actionable behavior around, okay, these devices are acting like these types of roles. On the right-hand side, you've got visibility, detection, and response. You see Doug's iPhone 2, that's with no agents on it. I just happen to see it on the wire. You're looking at the IP address, the mobile device, he's running iOS. He made a weird DNS client request to an IP internally, right? And I see that information in that detection in the second screen. And then lastly, the response. What happened after the fact? That's my gathering of all of the contextual information and suggestions for this investigation. This is, and I hate to say this, but this is 3 clicks. A lot of vendors are like, hey, 3 clicks and you're done. Well, when you do have 3 clicks, I hate saying it. I wish I could say 2 or 1, but it's usually about 3 clicks. It's very fast because the idea is this is a real-time detection. You can click within a couple, and within a couple of, there we go, within a couple of clicks, you will have reached your response and your action items on what you need to do. From a security and IT perspective, you're going to have different questions depending on which side of the house you're on. I'll just draw that out so you guys kind of get an idea. So armed with the visibility of situational awareness, your SecOps teams and your IT ops teams can answer the tough questions across the entire hybrid environment, cloud workloads to the data center, as well as remote sites and IoT deployments. They can answer those in real time and in context. An example, we'll just start with the first one. I won't go through all of these, but the SecOps might ask, are login credentials compromised? While the IT ops are wondering what that actual experience is. All of that information is available in the ExtraHop appliance. Keep in mind, ExtraHop originally started out as a performance appliance. So we've been doing performance all our lives. It was only about 3 years ago that we realized a lot of our customers were actually using that exact same data set from a security standpoint. And 3 years ago, we created Reveal X. We kept everything performance related inside the box. And that's another huge game changer. Preventing further IT tool sprawl. You only need the one box, and I can tell you if somebody was hacking something, I can tell you the performance of what they were hacking if they succeeded, right? Maybe you don't care about the performance per se in that particular situation, but the answer is there. He hacked this box, it was this person, and the performance was kind of degraded. IT ops and SecOps, otherwise known as the SOC and the NOC, together as the SNOC. So you got your operational value, you've got your business value, visibility, detections, hygiene, mitigation. On the business side, tool consolidation, you've got your performance, you've got your security, all into one. You've got your talent, you've got your data storage, furthering productivity. So I said earlier, ExtraHop plays nice. So we understand that there is a myriad of other tools that exist. And at the end of the day, we are here to help you solve those security and those performance related questions. So because of that, here's just a small list. This isn't an inclusive list, but we can ingest from a myriad of sources: AWS, Azure, Ixia, Alien Vault, Google Cloud, Gigamon, such and so forth. We can correlate. So I play nice, IBM QRadar, Splunk, ArcSight, Logarithm. And then from a response standpoint, whether it's just an augmented workflow or whether you want to go full automated, CrowdStrike, Checkpoint, Azure, Cisco ICE, Phantom, ServiceNow, Demisto, and Slack. These are all bundles that are readily available to you. ExtraHop has a very, very strong user base where both users create bundles, or they might create charts or something for consumption for other customers to use, but we also keep up with those workflows and with those bundles as well. So you turn us on, we start ingesting packets, I auto-categorize and classify everything. And then if you happen to already have some of these enterprise tools, which some of these you probably do, it's just providing me information, and then whether I'm delivering or whether I'm consuming, we can be another truth of data. I'm only going to present 2 use cases. With everything going on right now, there is a new reality. It is remote users. I hate saying that because the reality is remote users always existed. They just never existed on this scale. So most of my customers, they have the VPN, they have the VDI. They just don't know if they have the actual resources to do so, right? But jumping into what's going on right now in the world, you're going to run into a lot of quote unquote ghosts in the machine, which is a lot of VPN or other remote access infrastructure that is complex. And at the end of the day, what I have seen personally, not to state it's every customer, but VPN restrictions are being loosened. They're being opened up. They just need people to connect and get their work done at the end of the day. And security is kind of an afterthought, which is a big no-no. But with everything going on, security comes second, connectivity comes first, right? But either way, everyone's facing an unprecedented challenge as you try to rapidly manage the overnight conversion to this new distributed workforce. Using RevealX, this is an example of a security visibility play. So here we're looking at the United States. I can show you IPs that are accessing your infrastructure, whether they're bad or whether they're good, which geographic location they're coming from. I can monitor your Active Directory, so I can tell you whether they authenticated, whether they were approved, whether they failed, whether it was invalid, whether the account was disabled. Underneath everything here is the Kerberos authentication errors. And this is just an example, right? So this is completely out of the box. I'm reading all of this off of the wire, but this quickly lets you know whether somebody just has the wrong password or whether they were locked out, they're going to require some sort of assistant, or whether it was disabled. If it was disabled, which I do see quite often, most times that's nefarious behavior all in of itself. That's the security use case. From the performance visibility standpoint, looking at that exact same data, I can give you protocol information, teleconference network trafficking information, bytes in, bytes out, layer 7 metrics, CIFS profiling and servers, tracking the utilization of the remote access infrastructure, and then metrics associated with VPN, firewall, and load balancer monitoring, right? So not only do I have the resources, is there any nefarious or are there any security concerns, but in addition to who's accessing my VPNs, are they saturated? Do I need to spin some more instances up? Is my firewall doing what I expect it to do? All those sorts of questions. This, you guys can't click any of this. I realize that we can provide this after the fact, but we do have a wealth of resources. These are, whether it's on YouTube or whether you just go down to the bottom link, we'll provide this, but you can look at the Working From Home webinar series that we host. We've got a colleague of mine, Josh Snow. He likes to talk a lot more so than me, and he's got a lot of videos to prove exactly that. But at the end of the day, his Work From Home series are amazing, and they kind of give you a glimpse into the ExtraHop tool set. with today's conditions. We can also provide analyst reports. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the solution bundles from VPN monitoring and work from home visibility. It's my ability to say, hey, I see the customers that are coming in from the VPN and I'm looking at it from both sides. So I can tell you what IP is external, what they're associated with internal, who's signed in, and what resources they're accessing. Just once again, the depth of data so that you can understand, yeah, he's supposed to be going through that. This is all normal, good to go, nothing to see here, more or less. And lastly, I'll just give you one more kind of case study from an IoT perspective. This is one that, this is all different information now, but this is one that we caught inside a customer's environment, but they had a VoIP phone attack, right? So they saw this card on the left-hand side, which just states unconventional protocol communication on this Cisco device. And we found the following devices with similar routine behavior, list your Polycom devices, right? And then there were 3 IPs linked to this detection. So I went on ahead and I say, okay, investigation steps, the easy button, what's next? What's going on here? The very first stage is discovering and profiling the VoIP phone's make and model. So you do see it's Cisco, it's VoIP running Linux. I can look at device group information and the first time that I saw it. The second stage is to infer the group and segmentation policies. I can tell you that it was communicating over SSH 22. I can tell you that those other Polycom devices had similar behavior. So I can tell that those are segmented in some way or form, but they are a group in that they're all performing unconventional protocol communications. And then I detect anomalous behavior. I happen to know that just by SSH 22 on those devices, that is very abnormal. And that's something you should look into. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there really wasn't much data sent. So maybe not much was exfilled, not much was performed at the end of the day, but still that's 24.4 kilobytes versus an expected 0. And then lastly, I'm gonna gather contextual information for the validation. What were those IPs that were linked to that? What was going on there? And then the suggestion of the next step. So if I wanted to jump further and look further, I would click the easy button. And that's kind of just 2 case studies of things that I've seen the VoIP phone attack, in addition to the remote users working from home, scalability, performance, security considerations, all of the above. And that is all that I had. I think now we can switch over to Q&A unless somebody else.
Yep, I think so. Thank you so much, Brandon, and thank you, Chris, for y'all's presentations. Those are both very informative and very helpful. So that concludes the presentation portion of our webinar. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the Q&A panel and the chat panel and address any questions that you guys have with our speakers. As we continue through that, feel free to add additional questions. This is just kind of an open question forum. And panelists, any of you guys can answer these as we go. All right, so the first question that came in for us was, how can we use the information gathered to act upon the threats automatically?
I'm looking here. Okay, I'm looking at this. So how can we use the information gathered to act upon the threats automatically? It looks like Chris did state there's a swath ecosystem of integration partners with range responses such as creating ticket incident, ServiceNow, enforcing policy. Same thing goes with ExtraHop. So I play nice with ServiceNow. You can integrate via API. So for whether it's machine learning or whether it's just a detection card at the end of the day that say, hey, you should look here, you can integrate with ServiceNow so you can see who's assigned to the ticket, who's actively working the ticket and the ticket number. But then from the augmentation or from the automation standpoint, you can use orchestration such as what Chris brought up, something like a Phantom or a Swim Lane or a Demisto. So ExtraHop would be the source of truth. Then we can send that information out to some orchestration, some SOAR platform that can actually respond in an automated fashion.
Fantastic, thank you. And I've got a couple others that I think some folks answered privately, but it might apply to other people. So I'm going to go ahead and ask them. For encrypted data, will ExtraHop decrypt, or will that need to be done on a different device?
ExtraHop, yeah, so ExtraHop will decrypt. We can decrypt all the way up to TLS 1.3, which does take advantage of the PFS. If you've got F5s in-house, I can utilize that, and I can grab those ephemeral keys if need be. Or if we're talking TLS 1.2 or anything else that's more of a state key server pair combination, that is all something that we would actually do. So we would be decrypting that. You wouldn't actually perform that on a different device and then send the raw data out to us. Now we decrypt it, and then we keep it in memory at rest, if you will.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. We have another one here. How long does it take to determine what is normal behavior on a network?
Chris is correct in that as well. So it can be actually quicker than 4 weeks. 4 weeks is just always a good baseline. But depending on how noisy or how chatty that device is, I can create a baseline much sooner. But 3 to 4 weeks is typically where I will establish a norm. So any of my detections that are anomalous or are peer grouping or just based off of a behavior, I will learn that behavior, and you'll start to see those detection cards go away. There's a caveat here, and I'm just going to throw this out there. You turn us on, I'm monitoring everything, I'm seeing everything. You've got nefarious behavior, you've got somebody already on the inside. I'm gonna see that as normal. But the side is the other side of the coin is the second that normality of bad behavior stops, I will then see the normal behavior as abnormal and log it. But that is one thing that you do have to keep in mind. There's a huge customer here in Austin, Texas, and when they brought us in, it wasn't because they wanted to stop what might happen. It wasn't because they were being proactive. It was because they understood that odds are there's already threats inside, and they want to understand those threats.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions?
It looks like we have one more question here. How are the number of appliances calculated for deployment?
How are the number of appliances calculated for deployment? So each appliance, it depends on whether we're talking virtual, whether we're talking in the cloud, or whether we're talking physical. But to keep it simplistic, really 2 forms will dictate how many appliances we put in the field. A, is this a central data center? And if not, is it hub spoke? Do you care about the remote site? So if you have a central data center, but you also do have remote hubs, and you're not sending the remote hub data over to the central data center, but you want to see everything, that's potentially 1+ appliances. But we start out with the 1 gig, a very small form factor appliance, and we go all the way up to 100 gigs. So if you have more than 100 gigs worth of traffic, that would potentially be a separate appliance, right? The third is the device counts. So for every appliance, even the 100 gigs all the way down to the small form factors, I can only see, depending on the size of the appliance, an X number of active devices at any time. So there are hundreds of thousands and there are millions. But let's say you've only got 10 gigs per second line rate, and we give you a smaller form factor. Let's say we give you a 20 gig box, but you want to see every device that exists in your network, and that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands. That might bump you into either the bigger appliance or breaking it out amongst several smaller appliances. So just to recap, if you have multiple data centers that you want to monitor and they're physically not located and we're not aggregating any of that packet data, if you are seeing ingest rates that exceed the 100 gigs, or if you are seeing device counts that exceed our own limits on the device count side, those would dictate how many appliances we would potentially set up.
Great, thank you for answering that. It looks like we have addressed all of the questions in the chat and Q&A panels. I do want to thank our presenters again, Chris and Brandon, for their time. If you think of any additional questions as you move along your day, feel free to reach out to your account manager here at FutureCom, and we'll assist you in moving forward. If you don't currently have an account manager, you can reach out to our customer care team. And I also want to take a moment to remind you of our next webinar, which is scheduled for Friday, June 26th with our friends at Checkpoint. Their presentation is going to be about endpoint security in a hacker's world. To sign up for that, you can visit our website, or you can reach out to your account manager.
As an added bonus from our session today, in addition to receiving a DoorDash gift card for lunch, you have an opportunity to earn some additional rewards. As you can see on the screen right now, if you schedule and attend a one-on-one meeting with FutureCom and ExtraHop by June 26th, so 2 weeks from today, then you can receive a gift card of your choice from one of the places listed on the slide being shown right now. And if you have further questions about that, again, reach out to myself, your account manager, or your ExtraHop account rep to see how you can take advantage of scheduling a meeting and getting some further information maybe on your environment specifically and some questions you might have specific to that. So if there's not any further questions, I'm just gonna check one more time. If there's not any further questions, then we're gonna give you guys about 12 minutes early and back on your day. So thank you so much again for joining, and y'all stay safe out there, stay secure, and have a great lunch.